What's that from? There's an old commercial.
Can you hear me? Verizon? Was it Verizon?
Was it Verizon? I can't remember.
I think it was Verizon. And then there was a big to-do because the Can You Hear Me Now guy switched to doing T-Mobile, I think.
Oh, was it?
Or maybe Sprint.
It was one of those. Yeah, I do remember that happening.
Yeah. It was as iconic as the dude you're getting a Dell guy. Okay. All right, so I'm going to keep letting people in as they show up. And so officially welcome to the May 2022 Interlibrary Loan Roundtable. I think I know everyone, but just in case, I'm April Shaw. I'm the head of Interlibrary Loan at the Department of Libraries. And I think my official title is Librarian of Government Services, but I do the reference stuff here as well. So I thought we could just dive right into our discussion because I'm really interested to hear what people do. Jill, your hand is up. But you're muted. No? Okay, we'll circle back to the raised hand. So the topic for this meeting was about discussion sets and book groups, and I think just brainstorming and surveying how people handle these at their individual libraries. And for me, the cataloging aspect is big because that's how it's discoverable in Clover. But I think that others had an idea of more like the general process. How do you make it manageable? I have the questions here. How do you track it internally and other things like that? And I can go through the questions, but I'd just be interested to see where the discussion goes. And did anyone have anything they wanted to start with? Or want to share your process for managing book clubs? I only do one per year, so mine's a little different. Nobody? I'll start talking about the one that I run for state employees then. So state employees, I do one book club per year. 1 year I did 2, and that was a lot because they're all over the state. So I made the decision this year that I was just going to follow the Vermont Humanities, the Vermont Reads book. So every year I sign up and we get the 75 copies. And then I just make a list of everyone who has requested a book, who wants to be notified about the book club. And I have a giant distribution list in my email, but I manage it all through a spreadsheet. And mine is a little easier because when I send those books out, they do not have to come back. So it's probably far less complex than any of the libraries that run book groups where you are requesting books over interlibrary loan. When I do book groups, I help other departments organize them for their employees. And in the past, what I've done is just look in Clover to see who owns the title that they want. And then I check who may have multiple copies. And sometimes I just reuse the multi-copy form. And I have I'm not in charge of tracking those ones. I have the Clover request, but what I do is tell the person who is the point person at that department, because it's in a different location, that they are responsible for tracking the books that go to their employees. And we have not lost a book yet, so that seems to be working pretty well for us. But I use kind of the dual prong of use Clover to try and figure out who may have more than one copy, and then use the multi-copy form. And I do have steps on our website to request multiple copies from the same library, as opposed to using it to request from several libraries, because that is a strategy that can be used. But I would very love to hear what everyone else is doing for book groups. And Betsy said that their library is situated within about 10 miles of 4 other Vermont libraries and 3 New Hampshire libraries. So they check out from those first and then make ILL requests. That's a good strategy. And they track on a spreadsheet to keep track of who has which book. Anyone else? Joe, your hand is still up, so if you can unmute, you should be able to talk. And Beth says they have temporary barcodes that they use for this purpose, and they just check things out as normal. Yes, we do check when I request from other libraries, even if the other employee is in charge of them, I actually check out all of the books to that person, and we create temporary records and just use the Clover request numbers as the barcodes for those. Adrian says Clover barcodes or your own barcode. They use laminated barcodes. And Betsy says they use the Clover requests on the spreadsheet, but they don't make temporary barcodes. We probably should. I think you should go with whatever workflow works best for your library. And Virgil says they use a spreadsheet to keep track and use part of the Clover request number as the barcode. And then they get a basic cataloging and checked in Koha. So in Clover, does that mean that you have, do you have a discussion set copy tied to a patron in Clover or only in Koha? Because I know some people use SIP2 to tie it to a specific patron. Some people put patron information, and some people just put like book club as the patron and then check it out to an individual in Koha.
So what so what we do anyway is like I have just a book discussion patron that I created, and I check out all the book discussion books to that, and then keep a separate spreadsheet of the patron who has the book.
Okay. And Adrian says they affix the barcodes to the paper book strap with tape. It is low tech, but it works. And Betsy says they have rotating large print books, DVDs, and audio through a consortium, and all of those get laminated cards with codes, and adding another set to keep track of seems daunting. But the paper book strap seems possible. It does seem like a very easy way to track it. Because I know that with some book groups, if a lot of them come from out of state, then the out of state information doesn't carry over to the Clover request. So I know that can make it even harder to track what goes where if the out of state library doesn't include any identifying information on their book when they mail it. And Adrian points out that with the barcode on the book strap, anyone can check it in to get it off of the patron's record, not just ILL staff. That is helpful. All right. Let's see. Oh, so some other questions about book groups was who leads the book club? Is it the interlibrary loan staff? Is it someone else on staff and you just handle the requests for them? And what deadlines do you have for how far ahead people should request these? Because I know I've had some libraries say, well, I need them next week. And sometimes that can happen and sometimes it doesn't, depending on how many copies are available. Like, who decides on the books and who decides how far ahead you have to know what title is chosen?
We have an adult program person that and the children's librarian, and they pass it on to me to order for them.
Okay.
So it depends on what the deadline. I let them. They worry. I don't usually worry about the deadlines because they make sure that they pass them on to me in plenty of time to get them for the next book. The next. They usually order the next book when at the book discuss at the first book discussion, they'll they'll plan the next one, I think.
Okay. And Adrian said it depends on how the book is coming to you by mail or courier for timing, which makes sense. And Virgil says he just requests them, catalogs them, and checks them out. The programming staff lead the discussion, and they try to request them about a month before the actual discussion. So, all right. And do any of you require that they like run the titles by you ahead of time to make sure there's enough copies in state? Or have you run into the problem where they're like, we're going to go with this book, and then it turns out there's like 10 copies in the whole Northeast? Adrian said for timing, you have to think about time to arrive at the library, processing, and distribution, and that can take a while. And Betsy at Bradford says their group makes suggestions and votes on titles. They meet every 2 months, and she usually puts the request in right away and asks for an extended due date. They try to pick older titles that aren't in high demand, but they have gotten in trouble occasionally for overdues. And her director usually lead. And they have a ranked system, so she can get what she can based on availability and ranking. That's a good system. I think that would help so that you don't have people saying, let's read this book that just came out, and only, 10 libraries in the state have been able to process it so far.
Yeah, or may not be lending quite at that time.
Right.
Or maybe later.
Yeah. And it's always harder with the newer books.
Absolutely. And with requesting books, I know that some book groups, they like to have a copy of the book in hand when they have the prior meeting, or the meeting before, so that they could advertise it or market it or get it into a patron's hands. So it's one less step to have to come back to the library to pick up a copy, but you could already pick it up at the meeting before.
Right.
So that you would have to get it a lot earlier.
That makes sense.
But you might be returning it a little bit earlier. Or you might want to have books that are extras for the meeting so that people can have something to look at, to refer to if they don't, as well.
Yep. And Sandy says West Hartford has a book club that they host. Participants recommend books, and the group decides on which one to read. Sometimes they need a nudge from her to be a bit broader with their choices. And she did finally get them to agree to read a science fiction book. So they're going to read The Martian next. She checks to see if the books are available on ILL before they decide. And they do not choose new books. They need to be 6 months old. That does make it easier to get copies if they're at least 6 months old. And Betsy said their group has made the choice to really stretch in terms of topics and genres. And that's pretty cool. That does sound good. How did you get them to agree to that?
I don't know, really. But I think part of it was that we started meeting during COVID on Zoom, and we're still on Zoom. And so people were just so desperate to talk about books with a group of people. And the group that came together had a really wide variety of interests. And so folks were suggesting books that others had never heard of, that they would never otherwise read. And so finally we were like, well, let's just pick this one because its, title is closest to the start of the alphabet or something. And then we just sort of went from there and trusted each other in terms of adding to the suggestion list. And we'll go, okay, we just read, we read some sci-fi, and we're like, okay, so now we're going to do a nonfiction, something totally different, and people have really been sticking with it. But the conversations are super interesting too, because people are really okay being a little bit vulnerable and also sharing what they don't like, but in a way that's sensitive, rather than just being like, oh, I hated this book, because they know that not everyone in the group enjoyed the book that they really loved. And so it's been pretty neat.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so let me check the chat. Beth said that they're doing a play later this year and possibly a book of poetry. And Jean said that the group develops a list and the request is done in Clover 2 weeks before their meeting, and an extended due date is requested. And sometimes the request for an extended due date is not followed, which prompts dealing with overdues. Sometimes people miss that note, but yes. And Wendy says their book club is self-run, and she has asked them to get her the title no later than 3 weeks before they need it. And she also checks the availability, but has told them to stay away from the new titles. And like Virgil, she catalogs the title as an ILL and checks it out to each individual. And then Beth said, we also had a great discussion when we all read a different book by Cy Montgomery. They were skeptical, but it went really well. I can imagine that going really well. Her books are always so great. All right. So it does sound like most people are steering their patrons away from the new books just because of the problems with getting those. Let's see. In-house forms. I think we talked about that. Oh, I like this one. How many book clubs do you have going at any given time? Do you usually have one, or do you have multiple ones with, different audiences or topics? Marie said her problem is the non-library related book clubs that come to her looking for the newest releases. Yeah, those are hard. Do you usually tell them that you can't get that many copies of the new releases? How do you handle that?
I usually first go to like my Matter Valley library, sister libraries, and hope that they have copies, and I'll kind of gather those up. But generally if it's really new, like I had a request for a book that, came out a month ago, I just tell them I can't get any more than what we have on our shelf. And maybe I will suggest kindly that in the future they consider an older book.
Right. Okay. And Wendy says they have the one book club, but patrons who are in other book clubs looking for titles. And Wendy Sharkey says they have one, but are being asked for more. And Tammy says they have multiple book discussions that are ongoing. Virgil says one book club at a time. And Adrian says they've had shorter runs of book clubs, such as Audubon, which is 3 books over 3 months, in addition to the regular in-house book club. And Dina said they used to exclusively use the book sets at South Burlington, and now they've joined KitKeeper, so they have more options. And those are a different system from Clover, and they've been pretty informal. And she keeps a list of everyone who takes a book for the book group, and she knows everyone. And Marie said that they have a middle grade book club and are about to relaunch their adult book club. That's great. How many people here use the KitKeeper program? I know there's some. Winnie and Bennington, Beth at Fairleigh. Richard does. Okay. Oh, and Sandy also said at first they decided to do all of the genres. The group refuses to entertain a fantasy, but she brings it up every week anyway, and they need to choose a children's book. They usually choose historical fiction or biographies, which she is personally tired of, and some refuse to read now about World War I or II, so that restricts some of the new popular historical fiction. Athenaeum does not do KitKeeper. Tenzin says that they do, but someone else takes care of it. And Marie has book suggestions for Sandy. So I know that, so KitKeeper allows you to plan the sets out better, correct? Like the timing. I've seen some of the presentations about it. We are not in the KitKeeper program. Okay. It does sound really good. If we had been able, if ARPA money was not restricted for subscriptions, that would have been my dream. Okay. All right. Is there anything else about book sets, book discussions, book groups, KitKeeper? Anyone want to bring anything else up or ask questions?
So the people who do KitKeeper, what are some of the advantages or things you like about it that have been helpful that the prior system didn't do?
I'm not on KitKeeper, but I know that one of the great advantages is the being able to reserve sets in advance. Wendy Sharkey says the choice of titles. Beth Reynolds says all the books come together in a bag. Oh, Dina says one of their book club members has been in the hospital with a serious condition. They're not sure how they'll get her copy of the book back. Richard said it's a longer checkout period. That would solve the problem of asking for extended due dates if they just automatically come with that. And Beth said patrons can also look and recommend titles for their own groups. That's nice. Yeah, and Richard said, and you can reserve in advance, which I know really helps planning. Are there any school libraries in KitKeeper right now? Not sure. Okay. And Dina said if you're not on the Courier, it's harder to make KitKeeper work. I assume partially because USPS is a little unstable right now. Virgil asked, what's the cost to join? I'm not sure. My understanding last I knew was it was like a $20 a year and you have to contribute a certain number of book sets. But someone please correct me if I'm wrong. And if no one is sure, I can always email Mary Danko and ask. $30 a year and one book set. So not a very high cost. And I think right now, is KitKeeper restricted only to libraries on the Courier, or did it open up? Yes, restricted to libraries that are on the Courier. Okay. And this has only happened twice, but if someone tries to send a KitKeeper bag through the Courier without putting a Courier tag on it, it gets routed over to us, and then I have to figure out where it is going and send it on its way. So just make sure it's all put inside one of the Courier bags or has one of the regular Courier labels. Okay, Tina says they pick up from a nearby Courier library. Okay.
Oh.
Where can we find more info on KitKeeper? I think I know this. Let me check online.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the wrong site. Here we go. I just put the link in the chat. It's vtkitclub.com, and it's got a bunch of information about the Vermont KitKeeper.
Don't links copy open automatically. Chat in Teams. Teams.
I will also include the link when I send out the meeting notes. Write that down to make sure I do. Okay. Does anyone use KitKeeper and use Clover to request for book sets? Yes. Okay. Richard and Wendy Sharkey both do. Okay. Is Clover like the second resort? Because it is harder to find multiple copies owned by one library in Clover than it is in KitKeeper. KitKeeper is excellent. So
It is hard in Clover to locate multiples because sometimes it's the way that the library has cataloged it, the item for a particular reason. For example, we have multiple of a certain book, but a couple of the books were purchased on the behalf of the patron, for the behalf of the library by the patron. We call it adopt a book. So those are classified a little bit differently than the book kit discussion, and perhaps that's for future thinking, for reasons such as maybe weeding down the line. You know, if we have to get rid of 3 books, we'll keep the 2 books that were adopted. So we do have 5 books of a title, but when you look at the Clover record, you're seeing them grouped differently. So like at the top of the list, you might see 2 together, even though it's the same record, and then 3 below. And you're also, because we are part of Koha and Vocal, that we're in that long list of libraries often. And I don't know how Clover, I know it's supposed to be random sometimes, but it's very hard for someone to request a book from the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum because of these reasons. But even though we do have them in the collection, we're happy to lend them, and we would love to increase our numbers of what we can lend out. But those are some quirks of the cataloging and the way that the system is designed in Clover.
Right. And Wendy asked, how do you find book sets in Clover? And it's very tricky. Some of it is just sometimes the way the search results combine. If the ISBNs don't match up, then they don't end up on the same request. Some of it's just how people catalog. We took the approach of creating a barcode for every set that we have so that you can find it by typing in discussion set and a book title. And if we own a discussion set, then that comes up. And the title will actually say the title of the book and how many copies we have. But if we don't have a discussion set of that, then it just doesn't come up. Generally, I just tell people to look for the title, and then you end up having to dig through the search results, which is not the best strategy, but it's because there's no book set type of item in Clover. So I usually just type in the title and then go through my results and try to see who might have multiple copies.
Does it come up as Kit?
No.
Okay,
again, it depends on how it's cataloged. And
right.
then some catalogs have item type Kit, but for some reason the Z3950 like loses something in translation, or it interprets it as a different item type. So some of it's also just the systems don't communicate the way we would expect them to. And Tenzin said that she uses only Clover since most of the time they've had to use out of state for their discussion sets because it's not owned locally. And Dina said that they have never had trouble locating multiple copies in Clover, but as a non-Courier library, it was a hassle to have to rapid mail that many extra ILL books. I can imagine. Anything else from anyone? I actually have one more follow-up question for anyone on KitKeeper. Are your sets listed in Clover and in KitKeeper, or do you restrict them in Clover since you need to see if they'll stay, they need to be available if they're requested in KitKeeper? I'm wondering, I think some people have them listed in both places and some might have them in just one or the other. Not in Bennington, just in KitKeeper. Okay.
With questions like this,
some are in both.
about how your catalog is reflected in Clover for like something like KitKeeper, maybe it'd be helpful to do like a poll.
Adrian, I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Oh no, I don't think so. How is it now? Oh.
No. Is there a button on your headset? I always accidentally mute myself with the button.
I can hear her.
Or did mine stop working?
Oh.
No, my speakers were muted.
Okay.
Okay, don't hit random buttons on the computer. Sorry.
Easy to do. So questions like that to all libraries about how they catalog, it might be more helpful to do something like a poll. Maybe does Teams do polling? Like we could do a question, then people can answer. So like we could say like 50% of the participants today, do it or whatever. Because because I'm not really getting a full picture of like the whole group. I think I'm getting like individual responses, and it's really hard to like understand bigger picture.
So I think to do a poll in here, I would have had to add the poly poll thing. Oh, there it is. Let me add that in and see if it works. Some of the weird Teams things only work in state, and then some of them work out of state. Let me add them in. All right, so do we want, oh, I can only use 25 responses a month. Well, there's less than 25 of us here, so we can do that. Do you want to know how people are cataloging, or if they are using...
Or if KitKeeper comes up in Clover, or if it doesn't come up in Clover.
Okay.
Or I mean, just, it could be a test question. It could be like,
Yeah, let me try out the poll.
like,
and
how's
see
the
how it
weather by
goes.
you? Like, blue sky. Or what's your favorite book? Or no, that's not a yes or that.
Oh. No, it's not working right. Yeah, I can make polls and send them out in the email follow-up though, because that would be a good thing to ask about. And Tenzin wanted to know about requesting multiple copies. When she uses the blank request form, why does it go to awaiting approval? Do you own a copy of the title already? If you own a copy already, then it's making sure that you approve requesting another copy. So if the ISBN matches something that's in your catalog, it's going to compare that. Yeah, so that is why. You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? Anything else anyone wants to bring up?
Let's see.
Oh, one of the follow-up questions was, what statistics do you keep? Do you track the number of copies that are requested? Do you track the number of book clubs? Do you track all of it, just in case? Oh, Beth asked, when is the new enrollment date for the Courier? I will be opening up the interest form in about a month, and we'll get things rolling for that. Tenzin tracks all of it. So all of the number of copies and the number of book clubs run every year. And Wendy Sharkey says the books all get checked out, so it's all in the normal stats. All right. And Betsy says they track all of it. They count meetings as programming. So, yeah. And book requests get filed where relevant. So I assume those would end up in regular checkouts. Do you track your interlibrary loans separately? I should know this because I should know everything that goes in the annual report, but I lose track because it's giant.
We do track them separately.
Okay. All right. All right. So if there are no other questions, I think that's everything I had.
So Tenzin asked me a question. You track the books that you send out, just this, is that for purposes such as like seeing what it was of interest, or what are some of the purposes behind that? Just in terms of numbers of what's circulating?
I think she meant she tracks the books they send to patrons, not books from their collection that they send out. But I could be wrong. Okay. I am going to, oh, she said they keep track of how many they send for the monthly stats. All right.
Yeah.
And just a little jump to Beth had brought up the Courier, and we're gonna follow the same schedule that I did last year, where the interest form opens in it was either mid-June or early July last year, for libraries to say yes, we're interested, and to send me all of the information about their days they're open, their hours. And then I'll bring that to priority, and they will tell me what days work and what days do not. How many libraries are on the Courier now? There are 117 publics, 2 academics, and 6 schools. And starting in June, there will be one more seasonal academic for the summer. Bennington College is going to sign up for the summer. And then in July, Dorset will be starting, Dorset Public, because they joined Catamount. So you will just keep an eye out for the emails. I'll be sending those out with new schedules and labels, and I will send out the interest form for the Courier to basically every listserv possible once that interest form opens up. Yeah.
That's exciting about the summer season of Bennington College.
Yes, it's partially because they're also partnering with Middlebury College, and some of their summer stuff runs on the Bennington College campus, but it's going to be pretty nice, which is why it's seasonal for now. But yeah, and plus one more public library, and I've already had at least two public libraries ask me about joining the Courier, so it's still growing. Oh, and Betsy says their patrons are so grateful for the academic libraries. It's really nice having them there.
Yeah, because we've lost so many. Marlborough College and St. Michael's College, or well, at least on its own. And we don't have the access to the University of Vermont, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and the academic ones are running into the same problem with the budgets getting cut, and then they don't have staff to support as robust an interlibrary loan program as everyone would hope. Tenzin asks, do we always have to keep adding to our Clover list when a new library joins the Courier? Yes, because I have no way to automatically update that. So that's why I include the updated preferred lender list every time I send out an email with a new library.
Oh. That's a good reminder about that. And also printing out Courier labels.
Yes. And when I send out new libraries, I like to make sure I attach the new schedule and the new labels, because Jeanette at Rochester told me that was very helpful. So I like to make sure those go out too. Wendy has questions about the preferred lender list. If she reorders the list, does it change who receives the request first? For example, if she puts all those who have pickups on Thursdays first, will the requests go to them initially? And actually, I have clarification from Autographics on this, and the answer is yes. It turns out the system, when it distributes the preferred lender lists across, it just splits them across all of the requests in the order that they are in the preferred lender list. The system, I cannot handle randomizing those, distributing them across requests, then randomizing the system-wide and distributing that across any other remaining ones. It was just, I don't know if the developers couldn't find a way to make it happen, but it does not happen. So
That's an
that is
equity
why
problem.
it is. It's why the last time I sent out the preferred lender list, I randomized it and then put it in my email so that it's not hitting all of those libraries who are in a town that starts with A first. But I like
That's-
the idea of reordering it by whose stop dates are closest to yours, which would keep it still somewhat randomized. I had not thought of that.
I always feel so badly when I get a request like an hour after my courier has come and picked it up, because I know it's going to be it's going to sit there for a full week.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Pain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, and then for us, we're at the end of the alphabet. So I wondered, we don't get as many requests, maybe because we were randomized on the bottom.
Yeah,
So that's a real problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really want
So
to spread the load between everybody. And I want to make sure that, like the little or libraries, they might have different needs, or the bigger libraries might have different needs, or, in terms of having some of the items for their patrons when there's a lot of them out there, or perhaps having more items go to the smaller libraries so they feel like, paying for the courier is worth it and they stick with it. And yeah, so that's why some libraries are more lenders than others, but maybe it's also because of the catamount is also, which we're not part of, so I'm not familiar
there's
with
that,
that
and
as
then
the
it depends
priority.
on how big the collection is. So if you own more things, you're more likely to get more requests. But yeah, so I had always thought that since we had it set to randomize, that it would randomize, but apparently for the preferred lender list, it just can't do that. So that's why I sent out the update on the Courier listserv saying, it doesn't randomize. Here's a randomized list of lenders, because I have it in Excel, so I can set the list to randomize there. And Wendy said she just did it last week, thinking it might speed up delivery, and she won't see the result until she gets back on Saturday. And I would love a follow-up on that, because that is an experiment I can get behind.
Yeah, we have also at the Athenaeum have tracked which libraries have come very quickly for us, like within 2 days or 1 day or the day of, which happened once, just out of our own interest to see. It may not be all the time, but there are some libraries that are consistent where we get it very quickly. We make the request and then get it quickly.
And Betsy has her hand up.
Yeah, so this is maybe a somewhat related question, but I feel like our library is not tiny, but we're definitely not a big library. But I would say that we sort of think of ourselves as being pretty great and awesome, but we're probably on the smaller side. But since I started doing ILL, I've been trying really hard to just keep it going and maximize all the ILL everything. But I sometimes run up against being completely overwhelmed, either by requests or stuff coming in where my director is like, this is too many things, or where we've gotten 2 crates instead of 1. But how do you say no to people? And also, who can predict that 30 people will all return the books one day when they've been arrived over a staggered 3-week period or something. So I guess I'm just curious how other libraries deal with that, or if that's something that you folks have run into. And also, we are a a B library. We are Bradford. So I wonder if some of my like feeling really super great about myself about all my ILL hustle might have to do with just being high on the list. So thoughts? I see that Adrienne has some.
That we limit how many items. And that number could change. I mean, for a while since the pandemic, we have kept it at 4 requests. And there are sometimes, so you do have to override it in case a request does not go through and you cannot reuse the request. But and we did have an issue with autographics. Hopefully that was fixed. But usually it's no trouble. But yeah, that helps. And then people pick what they really want. We really haven't had any trouble with anyone submitting more. We probably could do a little bit more, but again, it's sometimes we have 2 bins and, it's feast or famine, it's sometimes really busy. And other weeks we get 2 bins and it's like, oh, that could all fit in one, but I guess it was over the 50 pounds. So that's also a factor.
We've also had a lot of homeschool activity.
Mm.
Like during COVID and then continuing where it's like, I'm sorry that you guys want to learn everything you can possibly learn about ancient Egypt. You can have 4 books. Like it's just, I struggle with that.
And you can set it by week too. We could do 2 requests a week or some libraries do, I think, 3 at any given time in the system. So it doesn't matter what status this is, but it's like 3 items that's in process or you're responsible for, then you can request again. So it's not necessarily a month or a week. So there's different ways you can configure those limits. And maybe April would know more about limits that you could set if you wanted.
I think you summarized it pretty well. You can set the limits in Clover, and then not all statuses count towards. So canceled should not count towards their limits. Completed, in process will, and I think shipped also does. But yeah, you can set them up in Clover to restrict how many each patron can have. And that's for libraries using SIP2 because it tracks by patron. If you don't have SIP2 and you have to manually enter your patron's name, it's not going to combine and it won't, the limits would not work the same way. I also want to say the not randomizing, as far as I know, because I asked them, is specific to the multi-copy form. So that should only be happening for when someone uses the multi-copy form. Regular requests are supposed to be randomized, and last I checked are. So Betsy, it could just be you and your awesome interlibrary loan service. It's not just a B name in your town. And Betsy says she learns something new about Clover every day. I deal with it on a daily basis, and 4 years in, I still learn something new all the time. And it's because everyone asks me really good questions.
Is there something that you could share, like a strategy or something fun you've learned recently that was helpful, or it doesn't have to be book club related or book sets or discussions? But
we just had a user group meeting and it was about cataloging. So I learned that requesting DVDs is problematic through the entire country. It is not just us. And it's all in how they're cataloged and identification numbers. So Wisconsin has the same problem, and I think Massachusetts was running into a similar problem. And Tenzin said they just started up patron-initiated requests, and can patrons request any book, meaning one that they own also? Yes, and it should come up as if they use the same record as your library is listed on, meaning the one with the same ISBN. Then when it goes to awaiting approval, it will display the little house icon next to that request. If they use one that is a different edition, it's still going to go to awaiting approval because all patron requests are supposed to go there. but it will not show the little house icon because it can't match it to your record.
Yeah, and it could depend on the format too that's sought, where you can miss it, or maybe it would suffice, or maybe it won't. For example, large print, some people wouldn't mind reading that, but other people would mind and would want a regular copy, or vice versa.
Yes.
But the computer will not say that they're the same because, of course, they're different records.
Yes, they are technically different.
What did Marie? She had her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I missed it. Marie, did you have something else?
I was just trying to think through coming up. How did Wendy come up with the list and sorting it by delivery date? Is it in? I'm trying to think if it's in like a Google Sheet or what is. Do we have that access to that?
I have it as an Excel sheet on the Courier page.
Okay. Oh, that is an Excel sheet. Because when I click on it, I think it just kind of pops up in my browser and it's not obvious that it's an Excel sheet. So I'll just go back and look at that. Thank you.
There should be. Let me get the page up. So if you go down to Courier delivery schedule and labels, the third link is the Excel sheet. So that way people can download the entire schedule and manipulate it into whatever version they want. I am really excited to hear how that experiment goes, though.
Is there anyone else with the way that they configure? So instead of like a pickup date, maybe they look at something else that they would put in the preferred list, or something that helps and get books faster, or items faster, or other.
Or if you're on the Courier, do you have any like super geographically close non-Courier libraries also in your preferred lender list?
No, because we prioritize Courier because it's lower price per unit than mailing something.
I know some libraries. I mean, I know some libraries, like if you go one town over, or they're, you know, a mile away, and you just go over and pick up the item. Does anyone have anything like that where they put that lender in their preferred lender list as well, since you already have like a system worked out with them where it doesn't have to go in the mail?
Oh. Kind of like, I wonder if Craftsberry, I don't think that they, either the libraries, but I believe they are just joined to make a library card. Did I read something about that?
I think it's Craftsberry Public and Albany Public. They share a catalog.
Kind of like Keachy and Wilder?
Yes. They also share a director, though. Craftsberry and Albany have different directors. Betsy says that their library participates in one card, so they often just pick up from local libraries, and not all of them participate in the Courier. And Simpson just joined. Simpson just joined one card, or they joined the Craftsberry group? I think they joined Craftsberry group, because I think Simpson and Albany have the same director, right? Craftsberry, yes. Yeah, I think they have the same director as the Albany Public Library. I think Kristen, I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong. I think it's Yuri, is the director of both, if I remember correctly. And Betsy also said sometimes non-Courier libraries hop onto their shipment every once in a while to get an item to another Courier library. And Wendy says their preferred lender list is just for Catamount libraries. And Beth just said nope, no other preferred list.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Lender.
Yes, Susan O'Donnell is Craftsberry, but Kristen is the director for Albany and the J.W. Simpson, I think.
Is that okay? Like about what Betsy wrote about sometimes non-courier libraries hop onto our shipment every once in a while to get an item to another courier library. I don't know. I mean,
I think it's when they're returning it.
but isn't it supposed to go the way that it was sent? Like if they're not paying for the service, I guess once in a while you know, help someone out, I guess, but like regularly, that doesn't seem.
Sorry, I'm here now that I've already outed myself as doing this. I'll say that it's if we have an item that's already going to that library. So to be clear, we wouldn't, you know, if someone has like a Babysitters Club book that is going to a library that we have other books going to, we would include it in that shipment. But no one's saying, you know, I have something that's going to this distant courier library. Will you generate a new, whatever, will you like put a new bag in? But this is also in terms of things coming and going. We, you know, as I said, we live within 10 miles of each other. So sometimes someone will drop a book off in our book drop after seeing the ILL request rather than putting it through the mail.
Oh yeah, we understand.
And so, yeah, you know, that might not return the same way if no one's driving in that direction. Do you know what I mean? We may not drive the book back to them.
Yeah, that's waste of time and effort, and that's outside of your workday. Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And that's also like the patron was not returning it in the right way.
To me, it works similar to like the partner libraries.
It's like, but there shouldn't be an assumption to do that, because we've had libraries that would send things and it's like intended for the academy or, you know, or something. It's like, we cannot be the last mile delivery service. It's very hard to get books over there.
Right.
The lock
No,
building.
I don't think that should be an expectation, but I think it's just that if they have a library nearby or they get something that isn't theirs, it's like the same way that we do with out-of-state libraries when they send it to the wrong library. If it's another courier library, I generally say, can you please just pop it in the courier to the library it's going to? I don't think it's a huge common occurrence.
No.
Yeah.
In Warren, I'll do that for the Warren school. It's easy. It happens maybe twice a year that they need to send something back to VitLib, like a discussion set or something. So to me, that's an easy partnership. And they barely use interlibrary loan, so.
Yeah, and they're listed as one of the partner libraries, so yeah. And Sandy said Hartford and West Hartford share out books with each other and deliver them. They don't use Clover for that, but that may change, as I think that's supposed to be Aspen had thrown a monkey wrench to putting holds on our local libraries. And we also go through Clover for another library near us and then use curbside pickup for them instead of the courier, which can cut down on the travel time. Oh, Marie said Aspen has made holds very messy. Does it just make it harder for people to place holds?
For us in the Valley, we share patrons, like they can check books out from the various libraries in the Valley. And so they'll put a hold on a book, but it's very unclear as to which book, what copy they're putting hold on and where they're going to pick it up. And it gets really confusing and messy.
Okay.
So it's I think it's in the library groups where the problem is happening.
Okay. I did not know that. And Adrian said that St. Johnsbury Academy sends items by USPS and they don't ask to use the courier service. I do know that you sometimes get things sent to you for them, which I think is just an error on the shipping library. But yeah, generally the ones where it's like a school library sharing a stop, they're on like the official schedule and they're listed as a partner library. It's not just send it to the closest public library in the area. I did once have a state employee ask me, well, I live in Montpelier. Can I just drop my stuff off at Kellogg Hubbard to go back to you? I was like, no, that's not really how it works. So, yes.
If they'd like to lobby for a statewide system, go for it.
Right. If you get us more funding and we can actually
Mhm.
run it everywhere, I would be
Yep.
all for it. And I like that it's grown steadily over the years, so it's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as Adrienne pointed out, items can get lost because it's not an expected way back. Especially if you're just sending it to somewhere and no one has any heads up. If it's something where both libraries are like, oh yes, this is gonna come back a different way. I think that's fine. It's just about the communication around it. All right. Is there anything else anyone wanted to talk about?
Do you have any new ideas now for making sets more discoverable and, in Clover? Or is there any work that we could do with autographics or?
There's nothing in the pipeline from Autographics about it. I had some chatting about cataloging, but everything, the way it's run, goes through the user group. So representatives from all of the groups vote on the priorities. And I was really excited that finally everyone agreed updating the mailing labels and the book straps was like a priority. So that's closer, but then they also plan the priorities a year out. So changes move a little slowly. Well, I mean, maybe it's not slow to the developers. It's more slowly than what I would want as an individual, but no big epiphanies yet. A statewide KitKeeper would be amazing. I don't think it's in the budget this year, but I will be keeping an eye on it as a possibility. It would also then require all of the libraries and schools to learn another system, which does not seem. I've seen the demos of it, and it doesn't seem super hard to request kits, but we also have to update our discussion set collection as well because some of them never circulate anymore. So it needs a good looking at. So it's on that, giant to-do list. But I'm still hoping for a really good epiphany about the circulation of book sets. But I think KitKeeper is that epiphany. It's just finding a way to make it happen. All right. Anyone else? All right. Quiet. So we can plan our next meeting, which will be on a Thursday. And will be 10 to noon. And is August, which is our anniversary month for this group. Let me find my calendar. Typically, it would be August 4th. I am actually out of the office because of an online class I'm taking. So how would Thursday, August 11th work for everybody? Does that sounds pretty good? Okay.
Do you think April, could we play trivia again?
Trivia would be
Different
fun.
questions. Different questions.
Yeah.
People can come up with them.
All right. I'll ask people to submit trivia. That was
It'll
fun.
be like Dorset's, code. What is it? Or
I'll
what
see if I can
academic
find
library
it.
is now available June through August? Or
Yes, I'll look into getting some trivia going, or maybe some Jeopardy. Maybe we'll go to Jeopardy. All right. Okay, so if we have nothing else, that's the end of the meeting. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day for this. This is where I always learn something, so it's good for me. All right. I will see you at the next meeting.
Bye, everybody.